Just believe us, we trying to teach you the rights to read you. It's just procedure, baby.
Trials, instruction, procedure. AWS gon' teach ya. Trials, instruction, procedure. AWS gon' teach ya. Yo, here's a tip. Don't get it twisted.
What do you do when you're one of the lowest paid public service attorneys in the country? You organize. And that's what we're discussing today on Attorneys with Swag. Something called sectorial bargaining. I'm Eugene Tucson. This is Attorneys with Swag. And I have a very special guest here. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, my name is Peter Laumann. I'm a homicide attorney with the Legal Aid Society's Homicide Defense Task Force. Basically, I represent people charged with murder across all 5 boroughs in New York City. I've been doing that for a couple of years. Before that, I was at Legal Aid Society's Queens office as a trial attorney and DNA attorney working on cases involving forensic evidence for about a decade between the two. So all in all, I've been a public defender for 12 years at Legal Aid.
And I'm Gregory Herrera, he, him, his. I am the digital forensics attorney at the Legal Aid Society, sitting in the Bronx. Before that, I was at the Bronx Defenders for about 7 years, just regular trial level criminal defense attorney. So all in all, a little over 8 years doing public defense work.
Hi, I'm Kathrina Gafycz, she, her, hers. I'm a housing staff attorney in the Brooklyn office doing tenant defense. We represent tenants who are being evicted in non-pays and holdovers, and I've been doing that for almost 3 years.
Okay. And before we get started, this is Attorneys with Swag. If you like what you like, if you like what you see, comment, subscribe, share it, join our Patreon. We're a 501c3, so we take donations also. But we're here to talk about sectorial bargaining. So before I butcher it, explain what sectorial bargaining is to the audience.
I guess I will take
Greg,
it.
it's yours.
Yeah. So it's this idea that, well, if you look historically, right, the Legal Aid Society has been the largest and longest existing provider of public defense and legal services in New York City. And back, at least, I'll give you I guess the somewhat short version. Back in 1994, the Legal Aid Society, they went on strike, the employees, because they were fighting for wages, they were fighting for a better standard of working conditions and such. And I mean, among other forces, but mainly then Mayor Rudy Giuliani, after, I believe it was, and I'm mixing up my history now, but I believe it was threatening to cancel the contract, possibly take the lawyers individually, all to like bar disciplinary proceedings and all that. Okay. Essentially it got really nasty. The strike only lasted like 2 or 3 days. And then the subsequent year put out a call for RFPs, request for proposal, to create alternate providers of legal services, of public defense, such that the Legal Aid Society employees wouldn't have the ability to strike again and shut down all the city courts, right? That's mid-90s. Throughout the 90s, other organizations opened up, like the Bronx Defenders, which I used to be a part of. Fast forward to now, there's been a lot of organizing work done, especially in the last 7 or 8 years, to get a lot of those former offices, former scab offices, right? And also just new legal service providers that have popped up in not just the public defense, like criminal case context, but just across the board, to organize all under the same union. Mm-hmm. So for some offices, it's a bit of a weird homecoming, like coming in out from the cold, right? Joining the union that these offices historically once scabbed from, as well as just new folks in the legal services world, joining under the same union in order to have more bargaining power, right? The idea being that we all do this very important work. We don't really do it for money, but we need money to survive in New York City 2025. It's expensive. It's difficult to retire doing this work, which is why so many experienced great attorneys have left. And not just attorneys, I mean advocates too, non-attorneys.
Yeah. So two questions, right? What's the definition of a scab, right? And what I didn't realize is that until that strike in 1994, all the non-legal aid organizations that are currently part of the sectorial bargaining didn't exist?
I believe that's right. Like, I know Bronx Defender started in 1997, I want to say.
Okay.
Somewhere in that, because it takes a while to like submit the request for proposal, get the funding, get approved, get going, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, there were some offices that didn't exist and came specifically out of that effort to bust the strike and create alternate providers by
Just Queens
the city.
Defenders.
I mean, when we started, like, legal aid was based, ALA and legal aid were more or less one and the same, right? Like, we were the union. And it was more or less over COVID, right? 2020 is really when that density started increasing, where Queens Defenders joined us, BDS after a really hard fight, and Queens Defender also after a really hard fight joined us. I mean, I think it mattered that we were getting the kind of benefits. ALA pretty much unilaterally forced the hand of management to telecommuting at a time where everybody else was like, no, you need to come in the office. And I think people saw that and joined us, and now there's only one public defender in the city that's not unionized, and that's New York County Defender in Manhattan. But every other public defender is now unionized, right?
Public defender and legal service provider.
And legal service provider, right? And some that includes like organizations like MFJ that do other kinds of work. That includes CAMBA. That includes organizations that don't do public defense. It also includes non-attorney legal workers in some of the organizations, which, you know, it's been a real, and we had to deal with senior attorneys at legal aid to some extent who were here during '94 or the years after that were like, these are scabs, whatever. And we, you know, it was actually heartening because we had conversations with them and said, no, the people that are there now who are scabs are largely in management, right?
Yeah.
The people that are there now trying to unionize are our union brothers and sisters. They want to be part of us. They're not there to break the union. They want to be part of our fight. So that was a huge growth. And now we're over 3,000 members, and, you know, legal aid is probably about a third of the union, instead of basically the alpha and omega of the union.
And scabs are basically people who cross the picket line and help create competitive organizations that gave the city leverage during that strike. That's basically the definition of scab?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the whole idea with RFPs, I mean, it's like, you know, you got to get the roof on your house done, right? You're going to hit up a bunch of contractors and ask, hey, who can do a good job, but at a fair value, or maybe the cheapest, right? And it's the same idea with the RFPs. The city incentivizes a race to the bottom by having providers submit, you know, every so often, whenever the contracts are up now, like what, every 2, 3, 4 years, submit sort of a request for how much funding they'll need, equivalent to X amount of cases, however they figure that out, however many people represented in a given year or budgetary period. And therefore, in the context of scabbing, people, I imagine in that time, 94 to 97-ish, would have said, yeah, sure, we could take on, you know, 100,000 cases for this amount of money. We'll do it better than legal aid. We'll do it at a better cost,
Cheaper,
with less headache, and, you know, fewer benefits, like all that fringe stuff that legal aid has. I mean, not to say that some of these alternate providers didn't have it. I wasn't around, so I don't know about the beginning, right? But the benefits are not the same. The salary hasn't been the same. Workloads are different and all that stuff. So Sectoral is about, as you said, Peter, like realizing, hey, we all kind of do similar work for similar reasons, yet your life could be very different depending where you work, right? Like when I was at the Bronx Defenders, I only worked in the Bronx. Obviously, we live in New York City. There's millions of people here. There are cases happening everywhere, people who need legal representation. So, but my working conditions in the Bronx and at a particular office in the Bronx are very different from people down the street, from people in another borough.
Yeah, so, and then what, because we basically, Legal Aid Society, we have a contract with our management. It comes up every so often, we go into bargaining. What differentiates that version of bargaining and this current version of bargaining is that we're all doing it simultaneously, correct? That's the sectorial part of it?
To some extent, we try to. We try as much as possible to be bargaining at the same time. But even if we're not, right? And that's today, whether it's today or later. I mean, when Bronx Defender authorized a strike and was able to avert it by getting major concessions from management for threatening a strike, I mean, our position was clear. We're not staffing arraignment shifts for Bronx Defender attorneys. Like, you can't cross the picket line. That's part of being a member of UAW. That's part of being a member of ALA. You can't cross a picket line. So even if our contracts weren't aligned, or even if one provider goes on strike and another doesn't, we don't do struck work. And good luck finding enough supervisors at legal aid to staff arraignment shifts. because if we go on strike, Bronx Defenders not taking our arraignment shifts, they're not taking. You can't have a judge say, you know what, I'm going to relieve legal aid and give it to Bronx Defender. That can't happen because they're now every provider but one is saying we're not going to take that work if our brothers and sisters are on strike.
And for the audience that doesn't know it, define UAW, define ALA. Wow. Just because not everyone that's watching this potentially understands these terms.
No, I'm only laughing because I myself, having been part of Bronx Defenders that unionized sometime during the early part of the pandemic, maybe like summer 2020, I'm only myself starting to understand the sort of superstructure of unions more. So I'm just chuckling because I'm like, I just learned this yesterday, essentially. But
I'm about to learn it right now.
Oh, okay. Oh, live. Okay. So we are if you're part of LAAA, that is now called, it used to be called, the Association of Legal Advocates and Attorneys.
Okay.
Advocates and attorneys, right? Because there are people in our union who are not attorneys. Although, as you said, Peter, it used to be all attorneys, if I'm not mistaken. And so that is one level of union. And then we are under the United Auto Workers Union, although I think its full proper name is much longer, UAW, right? They're mostly known for being the union that represents but workers at the main vehicle manufacturing plants, a lot of them in the Midwest.
Okay.
Right, the big three. What is it? Ford, now Stellantis, and GMC, say, right? Yeah. Or GM, yeah. And, so people think UAW, think auto workers, but actually I don't know how many, like recent 10 years or so, and I'm yapping a lot. I know you got to get a word in, I'm sorry. But they have really made an effort to organize people in different industries that you don't associate with auto workers. Higher ed, legal services, specifically in like Region 9 and 9A, which kind of splits New York State and kind of the Northeast area.
Okay. And the sector that we're currently speaking about, that's what is it, the number? It's like
local 2325, I'm sorry.
Local 2325, okay. I feel like we had to get that out eventually.
Yeah. 2225.
Yeah, 2225. Okay. All right, so let's explain just for the audience, the normal, what is the bargaining process? Like, how does it work?
So at Legal Aid, historically, it's been what's called closed bargaining, which means you have an executive board or bargaining committee that of elected representatives of the attorneys or union members, and they meet with management, in a room, and they hash out the details of the contract, and that can go on for an incredible amount of time, right? So in our last round of bargaining, it took over a year for management to make us an offer. Our contract was long expired. We've gone for years with expired contracts at Legal Aid, but it's really just people sitting at a table and coming to an agreement after however much time. And what we moved to in the last round of bargaining and now really stuck with, which I think has been a huge change for the better, is what's called open bargaining. And that means everybody who's in the union has the right to come in person or to watch the video feed of the bargaining committee meeting with management and seeing the back and forth of what management's willing to move on and what they're not, and what their reasoning is for it. And I think it really builds trust in the union when people get to see what happens, because what had happened in the past is management would say certain things about what happened in bargaining that we knew wasn't true, but it's not like these are recorded or there's a court reporter in the room, right? It's just management says X, we say Y, and then at the end of the day, people can believe what they want. And now it's become very clear what management says and what we say. And so we have the attorneys at Legal Aid at least have probably every week from now till the end of our contract, we're going to be meeting with management and bargaining, and all the way through June 30th to midnight, because our contract expires 11:59 p.m. on June 30th, which would give us the right to strike at midnight, on July 1st. We want a fair contract before that, but our goal is not to work on an expired contract. And so we want management to be very clear that 11:59 is a deadline, right? And that we want them to be in that room until the last second, because we want to make sure we get a fair contract before it expires. And if it doesn't, we'll have to see what we do. But we're going to be in the room for probably 100 hours with management between now and the end of our contract, and our members can see every minute of it if they want to.
And what's everyone's current role in this process? Because I know you're on the bargaining committee. What's your role?
Also on the bargaining committee.
Also on the bargaining committee.
Actually, if I can just throw in something about
Anything.
So
absolutely.
like open bargaining, it definitely builds trust with our members, but it also builds a lot of unity, like union support. Because in our last contract negotiations, like we had ratified the contract and then we left telecommuting open to keep bargaining over it. So I was involved in those negotiations, and we started off with closed bargaining for telecommuting. And then we came up with the idea of doing open bargaining and inviting people into the room to see what was going on. And the way that management changed was wild, because we were in these rooms with like our CEO, with management, and they were saying some horrific things. And then they would go out and be like sending out emails and like having these town halls with, LAS broadly, and saying things like, the union isn't telling you what we're talking about. Like, they're just not giving you this information. So we said, okay, well then we'll just invite people in and they can see what you're saying. And now that they know, like, oh yeah, actually, they're going to call our bluff and see what we're saying, it puts them on notice.
So is it kind of like the way the media works, where it's like messaging is extremely important? Like it's not only the value of what's on the negotiating table and like leverage and like who's right in terms of like what they can afford or what they can't afford, but it's also like the messaging and the kind of like how everything sounds, especially to like the voting audience.
Absolutely.
Open bargaining definitely like undercuts their ability to do their union busting messaging.
Okay.
And it also is like, look, when we ask them questions about salary, right? And historically, we've gotten, at my step, so to explain to people, our salary scale, when we bargain a contract, our salary is entirely based on seniority. So, and it's based on step, which is just years of service. So I'm on step 13 at this point. And if you compare what step 13 made 10 years ago to what step 13 makes today versus inflation, I'm making less money than I would have been paid 10 years ago at the same step.
Oh wow!
Right, and when
I didn't know how that broke.
Right, and we had we've made charts about this that show it's fucked up, right? Like we're making, and so we had during COVID, management would brag, we got you 4% this year or 12% over a 3-year contract. Meanwhile, that was behind inflation. So really, we were losing money, right? And so and we're still losing money, and and that's not even just comparing it to what 18B attorneys, what the court-appointed attorneys are making. That make $160 an hour, and that's not even including cases where they get enhanced rates for more money. What private attorneys are making, what court attorneys are making, what district attorneys are making, and so we're losing money on inflation. We're also losing money relative to what our competitors are getting. And so when we go in the room and say, okay, what are you going to do when? Because the thing about open bargaining is the pressure's on. So management has been forced to say to us, we agree that you're worth what you're asking for, the salary you're asking for. We agree that that's not an unreasonable ask. But, the city's just going to give us the money it's going to give us, and that's it. And it's like, okay, but what are you going to do to fight the city? Because we can't lobby directly with the city about salary. We bargain directly with the city. We bargain with management. And so when management says we get what the city gets, it's like, okay, then what are you going to do when the city shortchanges us again? What are you going to do to fight for us?
So that's a good question, because as someone who's recently joined CAT and
Contract Action Team.
Contract Action Team just joined it, so it doesn't slip on the tongue correctly.
We're all learning
quickly.
things. Yeah.
I kind of wonder, like, I still can't tell, and that's because I'm very new to the process of being in any role in the bargaining process, is how much is this validly management's fault, and how much is it just the city not providing them enough money to provide us? And if it is more city than them, how do we correctly like galvanize the city to give our management enough funding to fund us? What is the actual answer to that question?
Not to be a lawyer, right? But it depends. It's complicated. All that annoying lawyer answer stuff. But
Not to get straight to strike.
Yeah. I think on a few levels, I mean, obviously we're part of a union, right? And our union, UAW, especially Region 9A, which we're under, helps us, essentially lobby to elected officials, right? Who are in charge of budgets and can maybe increase the amount of funding that legal services providers like our various offices receive. But that doesn't mean that management is off the hook. Right? And I think that that's the point you're really making. Although the city controls largely most of our contracts, I'm speaking broadly here, I don't know the exact percentages, but I believe come from New York City funding, right? But New York City funding doesn't exist in a vacuum. There's New York State, there's the country, right? Like the federal government. So there are ways to try and advocate for increased funding at all levels. I think that it's really, unfortunately, a statement of values, right? Not necessarily from management, but from our funders, the city, largely, that, we don't matter. A lot of the times we're representing marginalized people in court, and we are the lowest paid employees in that courtroom, right? As you said, DAs, judges, court attorneys, court reporters,
And that's why
court
people
officers.
think what they do about public defenders, right?
They're like, you're a legal aid, get me out of here, get away from me, I don't want you to represent me, right? So we have to deal with that a lot. But other clients thankfully come to appreciate the hard work that we do because we signed up to do this work to help people. We're not asking for $1 million a year, right? We're not asking for ridiculous numbers. And I think specifically with this contract campaign, two things are different. One, that we are all bargaining as a sector. Now, it's sort of not perfect. I would more properly call it like quasi-sectoral bargaining because the way I understand it, proper sectoral bargaining, which does exist in a lot of countries, like in Europe, where the entire sector, truly, they are bargaining, they're trying to set a standard wage across the sector, even if they're different companies, right? Let's say working in a particular industry. We don't have that here because it's like a mix, a grab bag of different nonprofits that are funded to do different things, and the funding streams are all different. So it's a little messier, and not all the contracts are set to expire June 30th, 2025 at 11:59 p.m., right? Some contracts will expire next year, blah, blah, blah. But the idea is that, especially with the Legal Aid Society's bargaining process, the Legal Aid Society is the biggest, the oldest of the public defender organizations and legal services providers. People call it a shorthand, legal aid attorney, right? For the Legal Aid Society.
Sometimes even just a legal aid.
Just a legal aid, right?
Are you my legal aid, right?
The phrase has life unto its own, and that's because the Legal Aid Society here in New York City is like the OG. But the fact of it is, where was I going? I feel like I forgot.
What can management do, right?
Oh yeah, what can management do? And with as a statement of values, right? Since we're the lowest paid, we're representing marginalized people in court, right? People who are fighting to avoid a prison cell, to keep their kids or get their kids back in the home, to have the right to continue living here in the United States, right? To stay in their home as you do, right? So it's like the government not funding us is part of the problem, but it's on management to have our funders from the city and elsewhere really understand the value that we bring to New Yorkers in general, right? To not just marginalized communities, but to the concept of public safety. People think, oh, it's just public safety, just means more cops or more mental health beds. It's also people having access not just to due process, right? Whatever that means to different people, but also knowing that should you have problems and need some kind of legal assistance, there are people here in New York City who have the expertise, the experience, the skill set, and the will, the drive, the passion to actually help you, right? It's not just a job that you do for a couple of years and peace out. That's the way it is for some people, but oftentimes because they have to. Because how else are you supposed to live in New York City, pay rent, maybe have kids, maybe get married, maybe pay student loans, maybe buy an apartment, a condo, a house, whatever, all on a legal aid salary.
So I guess that's a great segue. What are the demands we're asking for in this contract? And obviously I think what they're trying to do is increase our quality of life so we can stay in the job longer, then and not burn out and like not go through a lot of things that keep people who want to do the job, such as myself, from staying in the job.
Yeah, so one of the demands I'm most proud of is federal defender parity.
Okay.
We know federal defenders are, so the way it works is in New York City, we're quote unquote state defenders, right? So we practice in state court. Almost every criminal case in the United States is in state court. And federal defenders practice in federal court. So if you're charged with a federal crime and you can't afford an attorney, you get a federal defender. We know how much they make. They're part of our union, the Federal Defenders of New York. So that they practice in basically all 5 boroughs and Long Island and a couple of upstate counties. And we said, we're worth what federal public defenders are worth. We do the same job and they get paid on the government scale, on the federal government scale. They also get a pension, which we don't. But we asked for management to give us in our contract what federal defenders make, which depending on your seniority is anywhere from 21% to a 90% raise. I mean, that's how low paid we are, is that at the same seniority, if we went and represented somebody on, they call it felon in possession of a gun, right? If you have a gun case in the federal court, you may be paid 75% more than I'm paid right now at the same seniority.
Wow.
And that's, people, and we know where people are leaving. They're leaving from places that are making that much more than we are. And so that's our salary demand, is federal defender parity. I could talk forever about our demands, but I don't want to hog too much of the conversation. So, is there anything that was like super important to you in our demands that?
I actually haven't looked at the demands, but I know we had talked about like case caps for housing.
Yeah.
We recently got like a 48 case per year cap in civil, and it's still not enough. Like housing's a little bit different from, obviously from criminal defense. We have right to counsel, so everyone is technically entitled to an attorney in an eviction proceeding, but there just aren't enough attorneys to go around. So right to counsel is not a real law in the sense that like there is not an actual entitlement to an attorney because there just aren't enough attorneys for everyone who's being evicted. So having a case cap where we can say, I'm not going to get burnt out by getting an endless amount of cases per year, so I can stay in this job and keep representing these people, would actually, one, keep people in the job, and then, attract talent and have us stay there. I can say that so I started at Legal Aid 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The people that were in my unit when I started are most of them are gone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We have like supervision teams. I'm the most senior attorney on my current supervision team.
Oh, wow.
Which is
really?
horrifying.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It shouldn't be that way. It's a lot of like lost institutional knowledge. It's a lot of like, just the learning that you do from your colleagues in a different way from like supervisors. You lose that.
Oh, no, yeah.
And like, I'm absolutely not qualified to be like talking to law graduates or like new attorneys and being like,
I'm a seasoned veteran.
Yes, I've been around the block. Let me tell you how to do this. A lot, like I'm the one with questions. I can't be helped. I love to help people, but.
Oh, 3 years, not
Yeah.
enough.
No.
Think about it. Like, how many office mates have you had, and how many of them are not at Legal Aid anymore?
Oh, no, yeah.
I've had 4 or 5 office mates, and 4 out of the 5 or 3 out of the 4 are gone.
Yeah. I think for my hiring class, the class was probably like 10 to 20. Yeah. I'm actually probably underselling that by a lot. Probably more than that. And now there's like a handful of us, 3, 4 maybe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Another thing about like demographic wise is that, for our salary demands, like at least, for my Brooklyn unit housing, most of us staff attorneys, not married. Of the ones that are married, I think maybe 2 have kids. Like it's just not a place that you can have, afford to start a family and stay in this job.
Yeah. I know we were speaking about it before, the comparison to what we get paid and what other public service providers in other states is like a good comparison to explain to the audience.
Yeah, the union just put out a study, an article about comparing cost of living adjusted public defender salaries of major cities, and we're last. Out of 14 major cities, New York City is last. We're behind, in Minneapolis, but the state of Minnesota threatened to strike, right? And they had to do that to get huge raises, right? Life-changing raises. They had to threaten a strike. And they had to threaten so that the people who funded them knew that the courts could shut down. That's what they had to do to get that money, right? And sometimes the city and state and management don't really believe that they have to pay people until they threaten to withhold their labor. We see it. New Jersey Transit may go on strike. I mean, we've seen UPS workers threaten to strike, and sometimes that's what it took. So LA, Chicago, Philly, when you adjust for inflation, we're dead last. And that's pathetic in a city that thinks of itself as progressive, right? I mean, our mayor, who got his cases dismissed by fortuitously, had he called it, I don't think it's a coincidental phrase, but like a big, beautiful budget. It's like the biggest budget in New York City history, which, it basically gives us nothing. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is pretty nuts. I mean, in terms of other bargaining demands, like there are some smaller things. Obviously, salary is the main thing, right? Like getting wages is the main benefit of working, right? We all wish we didn't have to work and could just do whatever we wanted, right? But trying to make the best choices you can in the system that we live in means you're trying to do a job that aligns with your values of helping people, but also you gotta eat, you gotta pay rent. Maybe, like you said, a bunch of colleagues, they would like to have kids and they can't afford to, let alone take a vacation. Like the work's already tough.
Or retire, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, look, there are people like in the last 3 months, given that we have a federal government that decides like economic policy, depending on which side of the bed our president wakes up on, like who were like, I don't know if I can retire in the next 6 months. So we have like, I don't know, pages and pages of demands on retirement, on we don't get a real pension, so we want to increase the retirement contribution our employer makes. On telecommuting, people literally reordered their lives for telecommuting because of the what we were allowed to do in terms of telecommuting. And then, the manager pulled the rug out from people and basically said overnight, nope, you 4 days a week in the office, 5 days a week in the office. And we want the same telecommuting protections as Bronx Defender was able to get, because that's part of the value of sectoral bargaining. But like we have just a huge range of, increasing a retirement buyout for people who've made a career here, retention incentives for people who stay here past year 10. So it's a really comprehensive set of bargaining demands to make it a place that people can live in a city that's, the greatest city in the world, but also like fucking expensive.
Yeah.
So,
On the
yeah,
on the
go ahead.
telecommuting, like to tie it back to sectoral bargaining, when we had been talking with our own management about telecommuting, and they were saying like, we're giving you this very progressive policy, like we're letting you telecommute 1 day per week, and we are able to say like we can look at contracts of our sister like organizations and say that's not true. Like other orgs are being able to do it like 3 days a week, and because we have that transparency and like that union solidarity sectorally, we can say like you're lying to us. Come on.
Right, and gender affirming care.
Yeah.
We made a demand for people who are trans, who are very afraid right now, given, again, the reactionary politics, that they may not be able to get covered gender affirming care or access to it, depending on where they live. And managers like, oh, we can't do that. And we're like, we know you can do it because one of our member organizations that has an office in Texas negotiated a contract with what we're asking for in a state that's prosecuting and persecuting people for, existing as trans or for being a doctor who.
So I guess what was the basis of them saying they can't do it? Is it they just said they can't, or are they? Because the argument, if they can do it, we can do it. But I guess what's their argument? We can't.
A lot of it is being told that something's not possible or something can't be done, a real sort of lack of imagination, yet we're able to point to either sister organizations in our union or maybe even in another sector where those conditions do exist, where workers can have those better working conditions. Like what we're asking for is very reasonable. If the objective of the employer is to create an environment where people can really have long, deep, experienced careers. At legal aid, I mean, when I was at Bronx Defenders, meeting various legal aid attorneys, because you're all in court, you end up speaking while you're sitting in that first row waiting for your client's cases to get called. You come to appreciate someone who's been doing this work for 20, 30 years, who has seen a lot of the changes go by and can give you a little tip on how to argue something, or hey, I've been in front of this judge before, this is what they're like, this is what to expect. And when you have people, as you're describing, Katie, who are being senior means year 3 or something because of the attrition, because people keep quitting. It's tough to keep that institutional knowledge, keep what you have remaining after people leave, develop any new institutional knowledge, and just have a sense that no matter what comes for our clients in the courtroom or other areas, like we have the experience to deal with that, like at a longer term view. You don't, I mean, who wants it? I remember having some clients challenge me when I was first starting out as a criminal defense attorney. They'd look me up and down and say, wait, you're my lawyer? Can I get someone with more experience?
How old are you?
Yeah.
Are you old enough to be here, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because they want someone who knows their shit, right? There'd be, at least the clients I was representing were charged in criminal court, facing prison time. And once you start representing clients in Supreme Court, felony prison time, 3.5 to 15 for a gun, as you were talking about gun cases earlier in the federal context. In state court, at least in New York, if you don't have a prior felony or you're not a predicate felon, 3.5 to 15 years. That's what they're facing. So clients want to know, do you know what you're doing?
Can you do this?
Are you experienced? Are you going to work hard on my case? I know you got other clients, but are you going to work hard on my case? Because I don't want to spend the next 3.5 to 15 years in a cage. If you can help me with that. So, you know, at the end of the day, it's to help our community. Like, I'm born and raised in Washington Heights, you know what I mean? Like, I've seen people in my family or in my sort of neighborhood environment, like, get arrested, get deported, end up in foster care, all that kind of stuff. And while some people may just think, well, that was a different time, or things are getting better, or at least they had an attorney, it's like, you want experienced advocates by your side who can help you inside the courtroom and out.
Yeah, I mean, I won't lie, that's the best part. That's like one of the reasons why I would never want to leave legal aid side, is because like the institutional knowledge, the ability to have a crisis occur and then not have to panic because you can send out an email to 500 of the best attorneys in the country and go, hey, has anyone dealt with this issue? Like, I would love to know if anyone's dealt with this issue. And you get so many responses because the culture of like trying to help each other is so ingrained in working at the legal aid side.
We get so many, I mean, I'm sure it's happened to you, like in housing court, right? Private attorneys who will go tell their clients or try and recruit clients, like, you don't want a shitty legal aid, then sidle up next to you on the bench. You'd be like, oh, I don't understand DNA. Or like, I don't understand, what is this case? Like, what? And I'll be like, fucking give me the retainer that you just like.
Yeah.
I have like landlord attorneys, terrible people, and they treat you like garbage. And then there's this one landlord attorney who, like, her friends are getting evicted, and she'll give them my number and be like, call her, she'll represent you, which I can't. Yeah. But it's like, either you think I'm good or you don't.
Right.
Well, I mean, everyone, it's easy to hate a housing court defense attorney until you're being evicted.
Right. Well, everybody hates lawyers until you need one, right? Like, that's.
Yeah.
Actually, if I could just say, like, I think there, like, maybe outside the legal world, there's this idea that maybe people take legal aid jobs as sort of a stepping stone to something else. It's like you're trying to climb a ladder, and I don't find that to be true. Like, everyone that I know at legal aid, first of all, the most brilliant attorneys I've ever met. Everyone is so passionate and so wonderful to work with, and every single one of them does it because they're passionate about the cause. You know, like, we're here to help people. I took this job thinking, like, I want this to be my entire career. I want to work at legal aid my whole life.
Yeah.
And of all the people that I've mentioned earlier that have left, none of them did it because they suddenly woke up one day and said, actually, I don't give a shit about our clients.
No, I won't lie. I know so many, especially doing attorneys at SWAG. I've gotten to know so many private attorneys, and they're all like, "Yo, bro, like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you should just go make some money." And I'm just kind of like, in truth, like, I feel like everyone, like, I feel like it's so easy to be a public defender because I feel like everyone deserves legal representation for free. Like, I think the idea that we all have to play this game of Monopoly called life. Yeah. And some of us get to not know the rules, and some of us get to know the rules, depending if you have money. Just to me, just seems insane. Yeah, like, it's an insane concept that like if you have money, you know that blue is worth this, and you know that if you step on this thing, you go to jail. Like, as compared if you don't know money, you'll find out when you get there.
I mean, it's bullshit. Crazy. It's like the fucking Law and Order mayor, right? The career cop mayor, just gets his case wiped out. And the taxpayers got charged probably many times our salary to represent him on those cases, right? And the laws, it's just different when you're certain power level, certain class, certain, it's like you're saying, but like, you know, my clients who you're like, oh, we need to get these like shitty, what do they call them? The special gun unit cops or whatever, the anti-crime, whatever. It's like, oh, your clients are criminals. It's like, yeah, but you were, and like it's washed away for a lot more money.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think with talking to private attorneys, I've met some, and they kind of have that tip. They're like, oh, okay, you've been doing public defense work for how long? Okay, by this year, you could probably be handling your own cases. And I don't, that's just not what I aspire to. That could be different for someone else, because there are some people who are like, look, I do see it as a stepping stone. Fine, I guess, do you. But as you said, the vast majority of people I've met are people who want to do this work for the long term. It's just about having good and fair working conditions, but also I don't know, like with you're talking about like the mayor getting his case dismissed and whatnot. I mean, today I was seeing some like little clips of what's happening sort of with the P. Diddy trial, right? And like his defense attorney, I noticed at least one of them is Brian Steele, who represented Young Thug. And I was like, oh, that guy's a good lawyer.
He sat in his jail cell.
He said, put me in with my client. And I was like, that's my man right there. I was like, if I wanted, maybe a private attorney like him.
I almost want to go up to the judge and be like, let me do it.
Yeah.
He knew that Diddy money was coming. He was like...
Well, but that's, I mean, even though he's a private attorney, it's not to take away from them. It's just that we want to be able to do this in the public sector. It's very stressful work, you know, obviously. But, I mean, as you were saying about the wanting to make sure people have lawyers for free, like representation in criminal cases is constitutionally mandated, right? But your program, Right to Counsel, RTC, is not constitutionally mandated. The city decided wisely to fund it, but it needs to expand that funding if it's going to mean anything to have a right to a housing lawyer if you need one. For immigration, like people, I don't know if people know, but obviously people are very worried about immigrants at this particular point in American history. You're not entitled to an attorney if the federal government is trying to deport you. You're not entitled to one, except for another program like RTC. It's called NYFUP, the New York Immigrant Families Unity Project, NYIFUP. That is a program funded by the New York City Council to provide representation free of cost to people in removal, deportation proceedings. There's some caveats about qualifying. I think an income guideline. You have to have certain conditions. So most of the people that NYFUP represents are people that either have or had at some point contact with the criminal legal system and now are funneled into immigration, right? But that's a program that only exists in New York. At least it was the first of its kind. I don't know if it's expanded to other municipalities, what have you. But that doesn't mean that because it's not required, it should just be like, here's a couple dollars, make of it what you can. If we're going to be New York City, as you said, a progressive city that really cares about protecting vulnerable, marginalized New Yorkers, we need to make sure that we fund all of these services. Now, if they said, okay, well, you know what, Greg, I'm sorry, we need to lay you off because there's no crime anymore. Listen. Oh, okay, I'll go.
Bring on the robots. I mean, I can't wait.
Okay, I'll find something else to do. There are other jobs that need doing. I'll figure it out. But as long as this is happening, and it kind of doesn't feel like it's gonna go away anytime soon.
Not yet.
The city and the state of New York should really try to make sure that they understand this is part of what creates a stable, safe city for everyone to live in. You know what I'm saying? Because we're not just, but
we give people services. Like we've helped people like get out of shitty situations, right? Like and like I have clients, like it's not every story. I don't want to be too like glossy over it, but like clients who are going through a rough part in their life. I'm sure you have like who like had a drug problem or like were down on their finances, whatever. We get them in touch with like an alternative to incarceration. We get them services, help maybe connect them with job services. And like I'll get calls from people like a year, 2, 5, even now like 10 years later. Like clients call just like, how are you doing? I just wanted to let you know I'm doing great. And nice. Like that's somebody who's not going to be like, reconnected or recontacting the criminal justice system, right? And those are the stories you don't hear because nobody's going to the paper and being like, oh, I want to talk about the time I was charged with a crime, but everything turned out fine. They just want to move on with their lives. So that's not a story that you hear in like the Post or whatever. But you know how those lawyers are important, right? The housing attorneys. Who always has an attorney in housing court?
Landlords.
Landlords, yeah, every fucking time. Landlords aren't strolling in there like without a lawyer. So
Honestly, kind of the flip side of this idea is also that like we're making these demands for better working conditions, for better salaries. It also attracts, marginalized talent. This is currently a job where like you have to be pretty privileged to be able to stay in it. So people are entitled to attorneys that look like them or have like shared backgrounds that understand where they're coming from. If you don't mind me sharing a little bit of personal stuff, like I was a kid.
Share away, baby. This is that type of podcast.
I was one of those kids like in family court who needed an attorney for the child like assigned to them, and now I get to be an attorney. I'm going to be starting a JRP in September. I like, not to be like I was a success story, but like you get to have someone change your life in a positive way, and then bring yourself up out of poverty and bring yourself up to, just do better in the world. And we're not allowing that other side of the story to happen if we're paying people the minimum that we can and only allowing people who have like their own means to survive in this job.
I keep it real true. I did not understand what being a lawyer was at all. I went to law school just wanting to be a lawyer. It seemed like a good idea. I grew up in the Bronx. I grew up in the projects. And my aspirations was not to become a public defender. My aspirations was to go to law school, make some money. I didn't know what that meant. And law school kind of kicked my ass. And like, in a good way, like the dean of my school told me, look, there's still good options out there. There's still jobs that have nothing to do with your GPA. Go towards those jobs, public service jobs, and you'll still find your way. And luckily, like if you watch on other podcasts, the longer story, but long story short, I got into a defense clinic and I realized like, oh wow, this is the job I was made to be. And personally, like I find a way to be happy regardless of the situation. So I feel like and also growing up, this is still the most amount of money that anyone I knew ever had. Yeah. So I feel like it's not hurting me personally too bad. But at the same time, I would say that like I could totally understand someone who like, however they find their way into this job, after going to law school, after putting all this work, would like to be like rewarded way more than their like what the city is currently funding us to be rewarded.
But it's not even just for us, right? Like, I mean, the thing is like, yeah, we represent people who can't afford rent, right? Like people who live 7 or 8 people to like a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, right? But what happens is lawyers fucking leave because like when the option B is like, again, making double, triple the amount of money we make, then I have clients and every attorney, whether it's housing, juvenile rights, criminal defense, homicide, has this story. I'm the 4th lawyer on some of my cases where our clients don't know who the lawyer is going to be, who's going to stand next to them at the next court date, because we have just lawyers leaving because like they want to stay. People I thought were going to stay here for fucking ever were like heart and soul, like legal aid lawyers. We're just like, I have a family. Like I can't look at my like husband, wife, partner, whatever, and say, turn down $75,000 extra a year, right? And so it's not just for us, right? It's our clients who are in the worst situations, who, whether they're incarcerated, out, whatever. But imagine being in jail for 3 or 4 years and every 6 months it's somebody else standing next to you because the person who was there has found a job that pays that much more, right? And it's not just for us. It's like, I mean, it might sound trite or self-serving, but it's for the people we represent, right? Like, and they need to know, they need that certainty of like, the person fighting for me is actually going to be fighting for me from now till the end, whatever the end is.
All right, so now we're gonna do a little segment. I love this segment. Laws you don't know what you want to know, and this is a very special laws you don't know you want to know because this is the first laws you don't know you want to know brought to you by the Latinos Out Loud podcast. Check it out, LatinosOutLoud.com. They are now the proud sponsors of Laws You Don't Know You Want to Know. And on this very special Laws You Don't Know You Want to Know, I know I keep repeating it, we're going to be answering the questions what you should do if you have a little too much fun in DR, and when you come back into the country, a customs and borders agent actually review your phone. So the reality of the situation, it has been in the news. I'm sure you guys have. I have a bunch of attorneys who've asked me what they're going to be doing. Even the Legal Aid Society put out a memo about subjecting privileged information to customs and border agents. The law around this is that when you're coming through the border, traveling out of state, they are legally allowed to request to search your phone and do what's called either basic or advanced search. And you're at the border, your phone or your laptop or any electronic device that they want to search is not protected by the Fourth Amendment. meaning they don't need reasonable suspicion. They don't need a warrant to search your electronic device. So there's two basic kinds of searches. I mean, there's two types of searches. There's a basic search in which they can ask you to open up the phone and scroll through it, click on, not any unprotected, password protected files, look through them, look through your text messages, look through your, what's the one that's definitely gonna have stuff on it? Signal. Look through your WhatsApp. All of it's open. Then there's what's called an advanced search, in which they can do forensic software to deep dive. They can make an entire copy of your phone, and even delete it or save another saved files. The big difference between this basic and advanced search is that for advanced search, they actually do need reasonable suspicion. They actually do need a warrant. Now, the big question of what you can do to protect your phone when you're going through the borders is obviously you can have it password protected. You can have it password protected or by have some kind of protection on it. But the only problem that has is that if you were to do that, what it does is that it allows them to keep your phone.
Leave your phone at home.
I mean, there's a few options. It depends on your threat model. Not to get all technical about it, but you got to do threat modeling and figure out
What's threat modeling?
Like essentially figure out what is your particular risk. Like for some people, they either their risk profile is just lower based on who they are, what they're involved in or not involved in, and for other people, it's more heightened, and therefore you have to take more measures, which, the trade-off is usually security versus convenience, right? Face ID, make it real quick to open up your phone, or do you want a very long alphanumeric password that is going to take you 20 seconds to type out just to open the phone or respond to a text?
So basically, the long story short of it is, if you decide to put a password protection and you choose not to hand it over and open it for them, what's going to basically happen is entitle them to seize your phone. And if they seize your phone, what you're going to have to do is get a receipt of the seizure and then put in an application to get your phone back, but they can hold it up to 5 days. Now, during that 5-day period, what they can do is that they can put it through advanced search, but what they would really need is still have to establish that reasonable suspicion for why putting it to advanced search. Now, obviously, if they had underlying basis for why they picked you out of the line and they were going to search you in the first place, the fact that you were not willing to put your phone to a basic search would potentially give them more information to get to that advanced search, like reasonable suspicion basis. But explain what you're describing again. Like, what are the different ways I guess you can protect your phone in this process?
I mean, this is not exhaustive. If you're watching, you're an audience member, you want to know more, like definitely do your research. But you got to start, I think, by identifying what's your risk level, right? Like, are you someone who's like, I don't care, I'm not involved in any organizing activity or whatever. I just want to go on a vacation, take some nice photos for Instagram and come back. You might decide, if you're asked, right, at coming back through CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, you might decide, sure, fine, you can look through my phone, I've got nothing to hide, right? But for other people, they may decide, one, I don't want to do that, because why? You're invading my privacy. I just don't want to. I don't feel that I have to. Or you might be concerned about information that you have on your phone, even if it's benign information, as we've seen. I think just today I was watching a little snippet of, and I may be butchering his name because I realize now I don't really say it out loud, but Hassan Piker, a very popular Twitch streamer, gamer, or interviewer, sort of a left-wing personality who lives online chronically, like we all do.
Online.
He is the online, as we all are in some way. But he was just recounting his experience going through a border search. Now, he elected to engage with the questioning, and he was being asked about his political opinions and views, right? Stuff that he and many of us would consider improper and impermissible, unlawful sort of questioning. I can't remember now if he was asked to show his device or not. I think ultimately they didn't hold on to it, as you were alluding to. But people have decided, like, I'm gonna just get a separate second phone.
Yeah.
Right. Some people call it a burner phone. I think that's a bit misleading. One, it gives it this like weird air of criminality. It's just like, how many people have second phones? We do, right? Working for the Legal Aid Society, we get a separate work phone. Here, keep all your stuff. But where I worked at the Bronx Offenders before, we didn't have a separate work phone that was given to you by the organization, right? Where the organization on an enterprise level can control a lot of the security, minimum requirements, all that. Like it was either you pay for one out of pocket and get a little stipend, or you just use your personal phone for work. So I say that because that means the commingling of your sort of personal texts and messages and, phone life and your professional stuff that we as lawyers have an obligation, like a legal duty to keep confidential, gets mixed up. And if you're someone, especially in that situation, your threat model is going to be high because you're like, I can't just be giving up my phone to whoever.
Exactly.
I've got confidential client information. And even with work phones, sorry to cut you off, but even with having a separate work phone, sometimes you still engage on work-related conversations and personal stuff with colleagues. You're on trial. You're just texting, right? You're trying to get the ideas out. You're not really necessarily thinking, oh, wait, hold on. This is a work conversation. Let me go to my work device that's over there. So that's what I say threat modeling.
Yeah, I'm definitely going with the bringing a separate phone because at the end of the day, I'm too much of a bum to lose my real phone. And like at the end of the day, I don't want them searching my stuff, whether I have nefarious or not nefarious. I got a lot of shit on there. And at the end of the day, if they ask me, I'm not opening it, but I also can't lose it for 5 days. So I'm stuck in I much have a blank phone that I'll take on vacation, have up my phone number. Before I come back, I'm sending the photos to myself. I'm swiping that shit and going, have fun, baby. Look at
this.
Look whatever you want. Give me my phone back. Ain't nothing on it. I think that's the model I'm going to. Right. Have you been thinking about this?
I mean, as a white person, it feels like maybe less so. But yeah, I mean, like I just went out of the country and part of it, like coming back was just very, you're very aware that like, there's no amount of protection from what the government might want to do to you right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, I mean, it's crazy because it like the border, it comes up in immigration, like there's completely different rules at the border than there are in regular life. For example, they could deny you re-entry, right? So you could be a green card holder, but if you leave the country and come back, that your entire status is subject to decline. Like no, even though you have a green card, you can stay in the country legally. We can deny you ever being able to re-enter the country. So it's like, and only Trump becoming president has kind of brought because these rules have always existed. They've always been kind of like part of what they could or could not do, but it's like you rarely heard it ever being enforced.
Yeah, so burner phone or I prefer second phone, because that's all it is, right? A burner phone makes it seem like you're doing shiesty
auxiliary phone.
Yeah, auxiliary phone. You could also just elect to not have a phone, maybe fucking read a book while you're flying. But the thing is, I get it, like in this modern world, even if you're going on vacation, you need to be able to communicate with people, whatever. Some people, this is a bit more on the technical, less legal side, but if you turn off your phone, right, it's in what's forensically known as BFU, before first unlock status. If you power it down completely, and then let's say you're just going through security and are asked to open it and you refuse to do that, right? Like you're like, and when either they or you turn it on, but you have not unlocked it that first time, with an iPhone, for example, you turn it off or it restarts, whatever, you turn it back on, you can't use Face ID that first unlock. You still got to put in your passcode.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Or fingerprint. Yeah.
Well,
they don't. They
don't allow. Sorry, yes. So you have to do it manually, right? Like you've got to enter in whatever your passcode is, and then you're allowed to revert back to either Touch ID or Face ID. And that makes it harder for them when they're using forensic software to try to extract information. They could get some information, but it's very limited because the phone was powered down, and it was not. Even though it may have been turned on to try to do, pull information out of it, it was not unlocked that first time once it's powered on. Okay. That's a long way of saying, like, you could just turn off your phone and be like, I'm not giving you. Like, obviously, though, it's like when we do know your rights trainings for people out in the community, like, what do I do if I encounter a cop? It's like, I can tell you what's on paper. I can tell you what the legal framework is, but I think that's why you have to think about threat modeling, because in that moment, you're like, oh my God, this is really happening to me. You get nervous, you get scared just because something weird and new and different is happening to you. And you might decide, sure, look at my phone, even though you had this cool plan, like they're not gonna get shit from me. You might be like, oh my, yeah, sure, I just wanna get home.
Yeah.
Right? And now we understand how some of our clients end up talking, in detective interrogation
Better than not get
rooms.
caught, that's what I always say.
Well, yeah, but so it really, you got to think about what your threat model is. And for some people, it might be, I can't risk it because I've got, at least for me, even on my personal device, I've had have I made sure that every text I've ever had with another like person on the defense team related to a client is off my phone? I probably have not. So I may have, I know I definitely still have actually some like case information about clients that is confidential that I have a duty, even after they've been my client years ago, I still have to keep that confidential. So I'm not giving over my device.
Yeah.
I probably will do what you're thinking about and just get a secondary device. Is it annoying to have to put in some numbers, blah, blah, but that inconvenience is sort of the price I feel I probably have to pay in order to, uphold my ethical duty to keep my client's information confidential.
Yeah. Yeah. But that was a lot more than I
Yeah, I was like, I was
I appreciate it. See, that's why laws you don't know, you want to know. Sometimes even I learn stuff. But all right, well, like I said, that was the first laws you don't know, you want to know, brought to you by Latinos Out Loud. Check out their website. It's going to be all right here. Make sure you check it out. It's a great podcast. But now back to the normal programming. I feel like we went over a lot. So now let's think worst case scenario. And worst case scenario is going on strike. What is that? How is that process work? And what is the? Why would we go on strike? What is the value? And then how does sectorial play a role in it? I know I'm adding a lot, but
yeah. So to go on strike, at least 2/3 of the membership have to vote to approve a strike. It's called a strike authorization vote. 2/3 is the bare minimum. No union wants to go on strike with the bare minimum. I mean, you realistically want the overwhelming majority of the union to trust you to lead them into a strike. And what that means is, once your contract is expired, your contract becomes not quite a month-to-month in terms of a housing lease, but your contract continues except for what's called the no strike and no lockout clause. So management can't lock you out during a strike. You can't go on strike. Management can't lock you out during the contract, which for us expires June 30th, 2025. We can't go on strike during the contract with some very specific exceptions in labor law. But once the contract has expired, we can go on strike. And that can be a one-day strike. It can be a 1 week. It can be 2 weeks. It can be indefinite, right? So, and that's part of the strike authorization is we want the membership to authorize X amount of time or indefinite amount of time. And what that means is we withhold our labor, right? And think about how many cases come through in a typical arraignment shift. And for those who haven't been in an arraignment shift, that means when you're arrested in New York, and you're entitled to see a judge within 24 hours, right? And on a Saturday night shift, there can be 150 people, 200 people. And that's not even counting holdovers, people who weren't seen in the morning shift. So, from 9 to 5, there may have been 100, and 20 of those got kicked over to the night shift. And so now you're talking about 170 cases. Now imagine that over the course of 2 days, 2 weeks, a month. How many cases in New York are not getting an attorney to see a judge? How many cases you would have to pay what's called an 18B, a court-appointed lawyer per hour at $160 per hour to do? How many cases in court on a given day in every one of what's called the court parts, the courtrooms? How many cases, hundreds of cases, thousands of cases in each courtroom in New York City, each courthouse in New York City see hundreds to thousands of cases. And if you have the main provider in the city, over 1,000 lawyers, withholding their labor and saying we're not covering cases because we're not getting paid fairly, we're not covering arraignment shifts because we're not getting retirement benefits, we're not covering hearings or trials because except an emergency. Obviously, we would never let an incarcerated client twist in the wind, but we're not doing that because you, the city, who are prosecuting our clients, who are putting them on an assembly line through Rikers, through criminal courts, through all this stuff, are not giving us enough to go through the 100 hours of body cam in every case, to go through the discovery, to represent people you want to condemn as criminals. Then it would be, and that our union brothers and sisters at Bronx Defenders won't be doing those cases, that our siblings at Brooklyn Defender. That means that the system will have, if not be impossible for it to run, for the system that we have, pretty damn close and pretty exorbitantly expensive.
And this is going to not only apply to criminal defense, but it's going to apply to all legal service providers, including housing court, including other civil type providers,
family court,
immigration
court, every single court in the city.
And look, we love our jobs. All of us love our jobs. Everybody we work with loves their jobs. We want to represent people. But the only way our clients are going to get the attorneys they deserve, the representation they deserve, the advocates they deserve, people who want to do this and stay in this job, is if the city and state and people who fund us take that seriously. And, as long as we're going to sit there and take whatever 2%, 3%, whatever the city wants to give us, they have no incentive to give us more money. Because the city is not going to give us, Eric Adams, if Andrew Cuomo becomes mayor, look at Giuliani, none of these mayors are going to give us what we're worth out of the goodness of our hearts to represent people they want to put in prison, right? And so we all hope that it's not necessary for us to withhold our labor, to shut the courts down, to do that. But, that is the most powerful tool whether it's, Stellantis threatened strikes, UPS, again, the most powerful tool a labor union has, a worker has, is to withhold their labor. And that's how it would work.
Okay. And I guess, would the goal be to have this all line up for exactly when the contract ends?
That depends, right? It depends, right? If we get to, and I don't want to get into too specific, because you said earlier, I don't want to be a lawyer, but it depends, right? If we're at June 25th, right, and they say, and we're getting ready to hold an authorization vote, and that might not be the date. That's an example. Yeah. And manager says, hold on. The city called us and said, just let's see if we can make money work, right? Just like you can adjourn a trial if it's set for trial, just like, sometimes your landlord can say, okay, you get an extra month. We'll say, look, we're not going to go on strike just for the sake of it, just because July 1st sounds like a fucking pretty date, right? We're not going to do that. But, it depends on where we are in bargaining. And so if it looks like management's close to being reasonable or the city is close to being reasonable, then we can say, we'll put it off, right? But it depends on how bargaining is looking.
And I guess what is for people who don't know, such as myself, what is the timeline for the strike authorization vote and the actual strike? Do you want it to be closed? Do you want to have a space? And what is the mechanisms for strike authorization vote procedurally? For someone who just wants to understand how it works.
Well, I think in terms of timeline, it could be sort of whatever timeline the bargaining committee / membership at large are trying to do. Obviously you want to do a lot of outreach to your members, make sure that they're informed of what it means to strike. As Peter said, we want to just do our jobs. Being on strike is very stressful, and it's probably more work than the already difficult jobs that we do, right?
That work isn't going to go away. That'll just be on a desk,
Like our, the work that we do day to day piles up while we're outside picketing and trying to create pressure for our management in the strike to come back to the table and really try to meet our demands, right? In terms of the process, this is very general, right? But essentially, there has to be I believe the bargaining committee has to recommend a strike or strike authorization vote to the executive board of the union, who then also has to vote and approve the real vote to go out to all members, right? And all members have to vote. As Peter said, it has to be a minimum of 2/3, but you really want as many people to vote yes. Yes, I am authorizing, the entity, the smaller entity, the bargaining committee, to call a strike if need be. And that if need be is doing a lot of work there, right? Because it's difficult to convince a bunch of people, right? Like at Bronx Offenders, when we had our strike authorization vote, in the weeks leading up to that, as you're having the conversations with people, educating them, I had people look at me in the face and said, no, Greg, I'm holding you responsible if we call one and it goes sideways. They're like, I'm trusting you with this vote. Use it wisely. So for me, I'm speaking personally, it was like a very solemn thing. I wasn't trying to go on strike just to have fun or give the finger to my employer. It wasn't about that. It was about, as a bargaining committee member, I'm entrusted by the larger membership to to bargain on their behalf, and to act on their behalf. Meaning, I have to be like a careful steward of this strike authorization vote. Once everyone voted yes, even then we didn't call a strike immediately. Okay, we got the vote passed, and it was 93% of members voted, and 93% of those who did vote voted to authorize a strike.
Oh wow, that's a great turnout.
Yeah, but that meant
It's like almost 90%. Like
over 90.
Yeah.
It was 93%, and that's because we, as difficult as those conversations were, we had them with members, and people understood our key bargaining demands and backed us up in the end. And in the end, we did not have to go on strike. We were able to get pretty much everything we asked for. Obviously, you're not going to get everything sometimes, but you want to make sure that the key things you want, that you are able to get if that's the way you choose to go.
And just so it's clear, to get what's called strike pay, so UAW and other major unions have a strike fund, right? And you get not as much as you would if you were our salary, and there's no guarantee you recoup this. Sometimes you get back pay once a contract is settled from the employer. But if you don't, we get strike pay. It's $500 a week, plus in New York, after a week of being on strike, unemployment. But you can't just fucking sit on your couch and play PS5. As much as I would love that, you're still working while you're on strike. You have to get strike pay, be picketing, be making phone calls to other members, doing strike work. I see that face.
No. I'll be live streaming Attorneys with Swag episodes. It's a part of the cause.
So you don't get the fucking strike pay, right?
I hope that will qualify.
Right, but you don't. Right. So well, it depends on what's on the Attorneys with Swag. But you might be like, break the strike. But no, like you have to. Well, strike is work. It's not like we're not working. You're striking is labor, right? It's just not labor for the people who are underpaying us. So it's not like we all want to sit on the beach, right? As nice as that would be over the summer, a strike is a commitment of risk, of really scary risk for people, right? Like, I don't know how I would pay my expenses if I went on strike, but hopefully we don't get there. We need to go on strike so we can pay our expenses, regardless of the financial situation we're in.
I think another element, is that we talk a lot about the strike itself, but the strike authorization vote, it's on its own, is a very powerful tool. If you have the numbers, you can say we have the authority from membership, which is the highest authority in the union, and that tells management they're not messing around.
And what people are feeling, right?
Yeah.
Like it says, we're tired of this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, I can't remember the dates exactly, but I'm pretty sure that the bargaining session during which, when I was at Bronx Offenders on the bargaining committee, the session during which we announced directly to management, because they know there's a strike authorization vote happening, but they didn't know the results. And we dropped it on them. I remember I was asked by the bargaining committee, hey, Greg, can you tell management,
Nice.
But
They must have loved you.
yeah. But I remember looking at management, several of the members of the management team directly in the eye, and that cartoonish gulp, fuck, because it was it's on. We don't want to do this. We're gonna be in this bargaining room all night if need be. And I believe, you'd have to check me on this, but I believe that was the night that we ended up getting our contract. It was 2-something in the morning, right? And we probably started the bargaining around 3 in the afternoon, right? So it was all day. But as you said, that in and of itself was a very powerful tool. Now, don't mistake it. We were ready for a strike if need be, but it's a lot of planning. It's a lot of people, running around figuring out logistics and where we're going to have people and all that stuff. So it's a lot of work. You're on bargaining committee. Mm-hmm. You're a union delegate. Mm-hmm. What else are you doing?
I'm a union VP.
Oh, sorry,
union VP. Used to be and a murder lawyer.
And just casually, right? Murder lawyer. So I do my regular job, right? Digital forensics attorney. I am also a delegate, and I am on the contract action team, right? And how many hats do you wear?
I'm a staff attorney. I'm on the BC and the EB, and then the junior attorney rep. So
4 hats.
Yeah.
All right. So it's we're already doing more than just our job, and this is just trying to bargain. And even if we were not bargaining, just trying to be involved in our union, right? Enforcing our contract, making sure that members, if an individual issue comes up. So it's again, we don't do this for the money, right? But we need the money in order to continue to do this. That's really the catch, if you will.
All right, man. Well, I feel like we covered it all. If there's anything else, I guess anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
You're a legal aid attorney. What's the most important thing to you?
Yeah.
Oh,
Other than money, other than salary.
Oh, other than salary, I would probably say case caps. I think the difference between having a reasonable caseload and having an unreasonable caseload is the difference between enjoying your life and hating your life. That's probably that. I do like. It's funny. I like telecommuting. I think telecommuting is very flexible. Thing that I think we all should deserve. But also, there's values to being in the office. So it's like that's not the one I'm necessarily like begging for. But like I would say, enforced case caps and salary are the two things that like. I'm all about quality of life. I'm all about enjoying your life. I personally, luckily, as a born and raised New Yorker, being a public defender comes very easy to me. I relate to my clients. Like relating to my clients makes my job so easy because I build that attorney-client relationship. I build that trust. I speak like them. I look like them. So my job is not as hard as it could be. So I just try to keep it enjoyable. Obviously, me and my wife are at that stage where we want kids, we want houses. So cash money, por favor.
Yeah, that would.
But case like I had 150 cases at one point, and like
yeah, that shit.
I had more than half of them were felonies and indicted, and like went to a supervisor and they're like, "Yeah, I've been waiting for you to come to me. Your numbers are high." I'm like, "That's your fucking job." And what we're asking for in the contract is to make it so that the supervisor comes to us.
Oh, okay.
Not so that we go to the supervisor.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the supervisor to review our cases and be like, take active fucking steps to say your caseload is too high for you to be. Doesn't matter how good of a lawyer you are. When you get to a certain number, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
And that's I mean, we're like supervisors have to do their job.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's crazy. We were waiting for you to come.
But that's why we get burnout, right? It's because
Yeah.
like the people that carry a fucking high caseload.
Yeah.
Supervisors like path of least resistance is letting them keep doing it, right? And that's not a contract is protection for workers against exactly that. It's not your job to go to your supervisor and be like, treat me well. Mm-hmm. It's their job to do that.
It also affects our clients because like our clients deserve robust representation from people who remember their names, remember the details of their cases, who aren't so overwhelmed that they're like, you are one of many and I'm sorry, but like there's only one of me.
Yeah.
They deserve better than that.
They deserve housing court attorneys that have been there for more than 3 years.
Well,
No. I'm not saying you're not good. I'm saying the entire sector deserves like 4 years, 5 years. Everyone deserves like that shit is crazy.
Yeah, and like especially housing law. Like I remember trying to like Google my way around it when I was having an issue with a landlord once, and it's so. I mean, it's incredibly confusing, right? Just
because
like
it's supposed to be, right? Because it's like
they don't want
landlord's benefit.
Yeah, and like having to navigate that as a tenant without an attorney, and even then you have an attorney who knows, but I want my attorney to be rested, and as you said, remember my name, remember my case details,
or even just have one attorney with your case, not like. I mean, I've had cases that were transferred 3-4 times before me, and you're meeting this person who like. I mean, understandably, at the end of their rope, it's like.
And they last long. We did a housing court episode. Check it out right here. Flip through. It was. I won't lie. It's so crazy because like in doing these episodes, it depresses me how much I'm learning about the law. And like housing court was fucking depressing. Like they seemed to hate. Like not hate. They seemed more depressed about the realities of their job than I was as a criminal defense attorney. Like housing court, it's like you're losing your house. Like that shit is crazy.
Yeah. And it's like this shit was like, oh, I already gave this paperwork to my lawyer. I already told my lawyer this. Like why do I have to answer these questions again? And it's like
it's like it's not vertical reputation at that point.
Yep. Yeah, it doesn't matter if your organization is vertical. If you just keep cycling through attorneys because of attrition, it's not vertical representation. I'm sure you'll have like a little fucking thing.
It pops up.
But yeah.
We should describe it. Vertical representation, unlike other organizations, is what it means is that you get the case either at arraignments or intake or whatever it's called, depending on what kind of law you're practicing, and you keep that case to the very end, at least to the very end of state court until it has to go to appeals. Which some organizations, what happens is you might have someone do an intake, you might have someone do your first appearance, someone doing hearing, and they do it out of efficiency, but it's extremely jarring for the experience of the client themselves.
Well, yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's why we do it. As you were saying before, it really stuck with me that you feel like you relate a lot to your client and that it's sort of easier to build that relationship. I feel like that has been generally my experience. Obviously, it's not going to happen with every single client, but it's nice when the client feels like, okay, you're actually treating me like a human being. Like, you understand me. I know you're going to like hustle for me, try to get me a good outcome. And yeah, I want to do that. I want the bandwidth to do that. I want to make sure that I can prioritize you as a client and prioritize all of my clients. That's all we're asking for with this contract. We're not making up these numbers out of thin air. It's you know, our salary ask is related to the federal defender scale. They're another shop within our union, so it's like we're not making these numbers up out of nowhere. There are public defenders at the federal level here in New York City, Southern District and Eastern District, who get paid what we're asking for. So, you know, that's a benchmark.
And as we said before, we're the greatest city in the world, but we're paid last in the big cities of all of New York City, of all of America.
Yep.
Which is insane. I guess any last things you want to put on the wish list?
I mean, look, we're looking for a contract for everybody. We're not looking to pit senior attorneys against junior attorneys, against middle attorneys. We want a contract that's fair for us, for our clients, and for the people who live here. Because everybody, it's easy to be like, oh, that person's a criminal, or that person's like a deadbeat tenant or whatever, until it's you or your son, your brother, your whatever, and you're like, they need a real lawyer, right? And that's what we're fighting for. And like, we want to get a fair contract, and we want all of us to be able to do the work we love. But you know, that's the fight, right? We want to fight the fight we got signed up for, not against management, not against the city for the wrong reasons. We want to fight against them for the right reasons.
I think that was perfectly said. Well, we got it, right? Everyone got it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was perfectly said. Thanks you guys for being here. This is very illuminating. I hope you guys had a good time. This is Attorneys Swag. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, subscribe. Leave a comment if you want us to do anything more about maybe your organization striking or getting some more information. We could do a whole like general episode. But that's it. We out. See you guys.
Thanks, all.
Should've seen it coming like a prophecy. Cause the work got us moving with velocity. We beastin' now, it's some monstrosity. We the plug to the source, unshockingly. Wow, what's he really gonna do now? Jolts in your system better stay on the ground. Volts in the circus is our spark to the sound. The energy that enters me are jewels in my crown. Wow, that's how it's always gonna be. You'll never really get it like NRG. Could do without the static and the flattery. Chill for I catch a charge like battery.
No style, turn your energy up. No work, turn your energy up. Too wild, turn your energy up. Turn your energy up. Energy up. No style, turn your energy up. No work, turn your energy up. Too wild, turn your energy up. Turn your energy up. Energy up. No style, turn your energy up. No work, turn your energy up. Too wild, turn your energy up. Turn your energy up. Energy up. No style, turn your energy up. No work, turn your energy up. Too wild, turn your energy up. Turn your energy up. Energy up. No weakness, just energy. Just energy. Just energy. No weakness, just energy. Energy. Just energy. No weakness, just energy. Just energy. Just energy. No weakness, just energy. Energy, just energy. No weakness, just energy. Just energy, just energy. No weakness, just energy. Energy, just energy.